is currently fucked up, and we are going to try to rebuild Dave Tate. You know, over the years, trashing the body, doing world-class things under the bar, it takes its toll. Dave's dealing with some big orthopedic issues, and after going through some of his medical history, some of his training history, and his current training status, we have some work to do. That's why I'm here at the Elite FTS headquarters, and we're going to be spending an entire day assessing, evaluating, and getting a game plan to move Dave Tate forward. All right, so the first movement that we're going to do here is the three-way T-spine foam roll. So what we're really looking at is extending over the roller on the first one. We're going to flex over the roller for more of a muscular feel on the second one, and then we're going to actively extend over the foam roller using a deep diaphragmatic breath. So we're going to go over these one by one. First things first is we're going to place our heels on the ground, butt's going to be on the ground, knees are going to be bent. So we want to be in a neutral-ish spinal position. We're going to be having this foam roller on the ground, and we're going to position it right between the shoulder blades. So for you, like that T4, T5 area is where we really want to be focusing in on. So we want the butt to remain on the ground, knees to be bent, and I want some resemblance of core stability here. So you don't have to flex super hard, but we just need some core activation here. The first movement, we're going to be dropping the head back into extension. We're going to be coming up into flexion at the arms, and we're going to be relaxing over the foam roller. Again, keeping that core active. We're going to be lifting the butt about an inch off the ground, and then we're going to be going over an oscillation technique here. Only about an inch of relative motion is happening of your body over the roller. So we're not doing the pizza dough roller here. What we're doing is bringing the butt up slightly, and we're just oscillating on those key segments here. The big thing with this one is we're working the joints into extension. So we're using this tool to extend off of. This isn't necessarily soft tissue work here. This is more joint extension-based work. We're going to stay here for 30 to 45 seconds, just making sure, again, the core stays active so we don't dump our spine into extension or into a pelvic anterior tilt. Second one here, we're going to keep the same base position, and we're going to reverse, and we're going to go into spinal flexion at the neck, at the mid-back, and then also give ourselves a hug this way. So as we are just extending, we're going to flex the whole way. We're going to keep the foam roller right between the shoulder blades again, picking the butt up an inch off the ground, and again, we're going to oscillate through here. By hugging ourselves forward, we get those scaps out of the way so we can get more of a muscular feel of the mid-back on the foam roller. And the key here, again, is to keep contraction at the core, normalize the pelvis, and again, the neck and the head, they lead the body, so we need to come into flexion just to make sure that we flex at the thoracic spine and the mid-back here. This is, again, 30 to 45 seconds using the oscillation technique and just making sure that this feels more muscular, whereas the first extension one felt more joint. Third one that we're going to end with here, we're going to go over and we're going to keep our butt on the ground on this one. Foam roller stays exactly in the same position, but the big differentiating factor on this one is that we're not going to be moving the foam roller at all. It's going to stay stationary the entire time. So what we're going to be doing is taking a deep breath in, and then as we extend, we're going to actively be breathing out, emptying our lungs, staying here for a second or two, coming back up with the deep breath in. So it's going to be breath in, full exhale, breath back in. Butt stays on ground, foam roller stays stationary, you moving over the foam roller to try to extend actively with the deep diaphragmatic breath.
Breathe here or here?
You're breathing with both. So you're going to breathe with your stomach and finish it off with the chest. Good, so anytime that we're doing any of this parasympathetic work like foam rolling, we really just want to be as slow and controlled as possible, leaving our body the ability to kind of open up some of its movement. That looks really good. Again, keeping the butt on the ground, the foam roller stationary, and using that deep diaphragmatic breath, trying to extend the breath in, extend the breath out, audibly blowing air out as we get into that extension-based position. We can do about 10 to 15 reps here as the third T-spine foam rolling drill. Cool. That makes sense?
Yep.
This one's the money move. So you do the first two just so we get to this one because this is active control. So because we don't want to be cranking on Dave's glenohumeral joint, the true shoulder joint, what we want to do is some reciprocal inhibition with some high tension based stretching. So we're going to move into internal and external rotation at the shoulder up into a 90-90 elevated position, and we're going to stabilize the hand and the forearm against the rack here. I'm going to split my stance. Now I'm going to get into this base position. Again, 90 degrees, maybe a little bit above, anywhere between 90 and 120. Split the stance, and this hand is going to be actively palpating the pecs. I want this thumb actually contacting the front side of that bone of the shoulder, just so I can monitor the position, make sure that we're not cranking into deep amounts of anterior glide at that shoulder. So I'm going to palpate, I'm going to have tension into the rack, and you can notice that I'm going to pull into internal rotation here. My arm doesn't move, but my body moves to lead the motion. So I'm going to go internal with tension, flexing. I'm going to keep that tension and flex against it on the backside. So we're going to be mobilizing in and out of internal and external rotation, again, monitoring with this hand. Let's get Dave set up here. So at about 90 degrees at that elbow, let's move it up a tiny bit here. We're going to split the stance with the right foot forward, left foot back. We're going to have that right hand coming over and just contacting that pec, just monitoring there. We're going to be pulling into internal rotation where the body is going to be rotating. Keep that tension and pull back against it eccentrically. And we're going to be going reciprocal inhibition back and forth here, keeping tension, keeping position at the glenohumeral joint to try to open up some of those soft tissues, mainly the pec major, pec minor. We're going to stay here for about 30 seconds, moving slow and controlled in and out of the stretch-based position. So we got through the three-way T-spine foam roll, and we did some single arm dynamic pec stretching. We're going to go in, we're going to try to mobilize the thoracic spine, the thoracic cage, and get that scap moving with quadruped T-spine rotations. We know you have some restriction here at the right shoulder, but we're going to do our best as possible to position that so again we can work the backside of the shoulder complex instead of restricting ourselves and doing nothing because of the restriction on the front side. So very similar to the way that we got in to position for the bird dog, we're going to get into this quadruped position. We're going to stabilize the shoulders, the hips, and the core, and that's going to be our base position here. So let's come down. From here, we're going to have shoulders centrated, hips turned on, core nice and activated. We're going to bring those left fingertips to the back of the head. I only want fingertip contact here. So left fingertips are going to come right to the back of the head. We're going to go elbow to elbow, slow and controlled, and then we're going to extend up, maintaining tension everywhere else. Good, and coming back down, repeating this. Good, and relax yourself for a second. So the key here is not just the dynamic mover. It's not only working on this left shoulder as the left fingertips are on the head. It's working the right shoulder into stability. It's working the lower quadrants into stability, and it's maintaining a spinal neutral position. So this actually mobilizes through the T-spine, gets the scap moving back and down the back, and actually does the job that we want it to do. If you're feeling this at the lower back, you need to brace harder here, and you need to brace the core harder. So let's go back with the left hand on the head and go through 2 more reps here. Good, you can see Dave's shoulder blade come down and back. This is not a reps game. This is not a range of motion game. We're going to try to get millimeters better every single time here and making sure the head is leading the motion. So as you rotate up, the head should be rotating up left as you come through. And you can see that Dave opens up his range of motion a little bit here more with that head rotation. The last thing I want to integrate here is the deep diaphragmatic breath. So as you rotate up, you're going to fully exhale out, kind of sticking it for a second or two up at the top of this range of motion. So this is something that is going to be a staple in Dave's program just because in addition to some of his lifting, he is spending a lot of time in the seated position, the flex position, internally rotated shoulder position. So the way that we're going to try to improve Dave's right shoulder here is not by going through and cranking at the shoulder, but trying to improve the thoracic cage, the thoracic spine, and the way that the shoulder is dynamically stabilizing on the backside of the body. So after we did the T-spine rotations, we opened up that range of motion, but now we got to stabilize on top of that T-spine extended base range of motion. And the way that we're going to activate the upper back with that in mind is the band pull down and apart. So we're not using the traditional band pull apart with Dave because he has had some trouble with compensation patterns, especially at the upper trap on the right side. So we're using the band pull down and apart to take away the tension from the upper traps and instead using tension at the lats to really optimize the feel and the function of the upper back contracting. So we have this circular red mini band that is attached to the top of the squat rack here. Again, we're going to have hands about shoulder width apart, palms are going to be facing down. I want to make sure that we have the glutes, the core turned on, and the rib cage is in a down position so we don't compensate through this one. This is a two-part. So we're going to be pulling down, and this is going to be at a level of about the sternal notch here. So the first move is pulling down. The second move is keeping that tension and pulling the hands apart from one another. I'm going to step up here just so I don't hit the rack. So it's going to be pull down where the lats turn on, pull apart where the upper back turns on, maintaining the lats the entire time, working on flexing as hard as you possibly can to try to get the biggest contraction possible. So the first move here, let's go a little bit more wide with the hands. Palms are in a down position. We want to pre-tension glutes, pre-tension, get that rib cage down, and we're going to be pulling down on the band, and then we're going to be driving those hands apart and squeezing as hard as you possibly can. Good. And then coming back, keeping the lats engaged the entire time. So the lats are one of the biggest prime stabilizers of the posterior chain here. And if we can get them to work the shoulder position, we can get better contraction quality happening on the posterior delt, on the rhomboids, and allowing the shoulder blades to move back into retraction, but also depression and downward rotation here. Because this is an activation drill, we're not going crazy with the reps. Stay within 15 to 20 total reps. Break that down within 2 to 4 sets. For our upper body foundational movement pattern development movement, we're going to be going in and we're going to be doing hands elevated push-ups. So Dave's doing a lot of open chain pressing on the bench, but we really want to have the scaps again involved with the movement, again challenging the position of the thoracic cage, and that's done through a closed chain horizontal press, which is a push-up with hands in contact with a movable surface like the ground or a bench. So we're going to be using the bench here. We're going to start off in a kneeling position, and we're going to make sure that, again, we optimize our position before we even go down into a single rep. So I want gripping the bench, externally rotating, pits of the elbows are going to come forward. The core is turned on in this position. We're going to step back. We're going to step back here, making sure that we have everything integrated with the shoulders, the hips, and the core. We're going to come slow and controlled down, and then we're going to press back up, keeping constant tension on all the stabilizers. So again, before we get into this position, we're going one segment at a time. We're really getting our shoulders in a great position, co-contracting pecs and lats. We're getting the core turned on, and you're going to step one leg back at a time, making sure that we keep the core in a neutral position. We're going to control the eccentric down, and then we're going to press back up, constant tension, never letting go of that tension, especially on the backside of the shoulder blade here. Again, for these foundational movement patterns, we're thinking about 3 reps, 3 to 5 sets, having a high quality of movement, a high amount of tension. We're not looking for a training effect here. Let's bring the knees down. We're looking for optimizing movement patterns. And as you can see, getting into the right positions, trying to link up this as a full body movement, it can be taxing. And that's why we want to keep it low level in terms of the total amount of reps so we don't pre-fatigue before we get into our bench press. So we're going to end Dave's 6-phase dynamic warm-up sequence for the upper body with some CNS stimulation through an iso press into the rack. Because we can contact the ball with hands and we can grip into the ball, we're going to be using this pressing up against the rack. You can see that the top of the ball here is going to be in alignment with my chin. We want the hands to be in the midline of the ball here. We want to split the stance. We want a strong, controlled core, and we're going to grip the ball as hard as we can, driving into the rack, knowing very well that it's not going to move anywhere. This is called an overcoming isometric, and we're going to hold it for 5 to 7 seconds, trying to build up as much tension in the entire body as possible. Good. Grip it with the hands, press into the rack, and back off. Making sure this is activation drills, this is CNS prep, this is something that we don't want to overdo. So 3 to 4 bouts of this 5 to 7 second holds, that's what we're looking for in order to not pre-fatigue and actually stimulate the CNS for better performances on the bench. So we've had a hell of a 2-day period here at Elite FTS with Dave Tate, and really I am really hopeful of Dave really revolutionizing the way he's able to train and just getting into better general shape and feeling better on a daily basis. You know, we've gone through a deep subjective history. We talked to all his medical specialists, his physician, his coaches from the past, inside circle. We got a really good subjective history. We did a ton of movement testing. We got in foundational movement pattern testing. I was able to actually assess Dave orthopedically, get in, watch a training session, and then strategize on the whiteboard and really set up his first step of this process, which is trying to implement in the 6-phase foundational movement pattern sequence for upper body and lower body emphasized days. So while this is a great educational tool, a lot of the specific methods that we went over and we coached with Dave is specific to him. Specific to his needs and his goals. So while everything can be used in terms of quality education for you and your clients, this is really specific to Dave. I really want you guys to focus in on the actual sequence, the 6 phases, and how to plug and play into that sequence. So this is just the first step of many with us. This is step 1. This is like we're at base camp and we're about to climb a fucking mountain right now. So when we in-play this, we're gonna go over, we're gonna make sure that our programming is on point. We have the 6-phase sequences in, and then we're gonna be building a really big repertoire of Dave's programming over the next couple months, even into a year. So this is step 1, but I'm really excited for the possibilities that we have. All right, so it's been 10 weeks exactly since I was here in Columbus.
So my hiding on Instagram didn't work really well. So I posted some of the videos on Instagram. I think this is important to discuss because I think other people will run into this.